Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Liz, your host here at Crime Untold, and today I have just a few crime stuff to talk about, just a few. So the first one we're going to discuss is the Happy Face Killer, and he's in the news for something completely different other than, obviously, who... You'll understand what I mean. So they're trying to identify his victim, whom he called Claudia. So Claudia was found on August 30th of 1992 along Highway 95. So Keith Jesperson, aka the Happy Face Killer, said he met up with a woman near Victorville at a brake check on the I-15, and she was hitchhiking her way to LA. So Jesperson told her that he was going to Arizona, but she decided to hitch a ride with him until the Burns Brother rest stop in Coachella. So he ultimately would rape her and strangle her in his truck and would dump her near Blythe, which is in Riverside County. He had no idea what her name was and was just calling her Claudia. So Claudia was about 5'4" in height. She was between 20 to 30 and had blonde hair that was shaggy. She smoked and had 2 dots tattooed on her thumb of her right hand. So, the thumb of her right hand. She was wearing a t-shirt with a skeleton riding a motorcycle and blue jeans. So thankfully, with using genetic genealogy, they were able to discover her father. His name is Alfonso Gonzales. So he had multiple children, but they do not know who Claudia is. So they contacted his children. It is believed that he either fathered Claudia when he was in Santa Barbara, and that Claudia's mother could either be from Texas or Louisiana. Unfortunately, Claudia's dad passed away, but the Riverside County District Attorney's Office is hopeful that with the information public, they will be able to gain some leads. So it is the goal of the DA's office to find the family in which she belongs to and reunite them finally after 32 years. So if you have any information about Claudia, you can reach the cold case team at 951-955-5567, or you can email them at coldcaseunit.rivcoda.org. Rex Heuermann was also charged with a 4th homicide charge in the connection to the murder of Maureen Brainard Barnes, which is the last of the Gilgo 4 that were found on Gilgo Beach. So those are the 4 that are most of the time joined together into a group together, basically, out of all the victims of the Gilgo Beach murders. One from New Hampshire, actually, is the case of Harmony Montgomery. It just got a little more interesting. So Adam Montgomery, which is Harmony's dad, has been charged with homicide and assault, and it seems that his attorney wants to sever these charges to separate trials. So I'm assuming they want to do a plea deal so he can plead down to a lesser charge, but this is the latest update in this case from here in New Hampshire, specifically in Manchester. Another reason I think they want to sever the charges is that he cannot be tried for the death penalty. So if there's an underlying cause, which I also talk about in another update in a case for this video that I'm going to discuss. So if there's an underlying cause that gives them just for the death penalty, they will try for the death penalty. So if you're not aware of death penalty cases or homicide cases, if there's an underlying charge of assault, robbery, there's another one, that puts a death penalty on the table. Even in a death penalty free state, they will extradite you to another state or put you in a prison where they will do the death penalty. A murder that took place last year now is back in the limelight. So the murder of Adriana Gonzalez now has suspects identified with the crime. So back on Saturday, November 25th, 2023, 21-year-old Adriana Gonzalez was run over after being shot fatally. But there are reports that say she was gunned down and then run over. And this was in the Wayne's Liquor parking lot around 11:30 a.m. near Fresno Street and California Avenue. So subsequently, Gonzales was brought to Community Regional Medical Center, where she would ultimately die from her injuries. Witnesses reported to police that day that they saw her fall to the ground and then they ran her over. So the day of the murder, it is known that police learned that the victim had gotten into a fight with now who has been arrested. So from the day of the murder, they have been looking for Devin Maliki, who's 23, and Amina Norman, who's 26, who were responsible for the crime. But it is also a development that 29-year-old Sabrina Acosto Ramirez also helped the suspects, basically aiding and abetting after the fact. This is still ongoing, so when there's any updates, I will inform you guys. And lastly, we're going to talk about Bryan Kohberger. Bryan Kohberger is back in the news. Back on Wednesday, January 17th, the defense lawyer for Bryan Kohberger wants the request for the case dismissal released for the public to see. So his lawyer is adamant that the judge needs to make arguments public about the ultimate decision to deny the dismissal of the 4 homicide charges. His defense also made 2 other attempts to have this case dismissed. So in one, it was brought in front of a grand jury in which they introduced using what's called the wrong standard of truth. Basically, this means that any truths that you swore were accurate after being sworn in during a court case should be affirmed, and what they're arguing is that there was a failure for telling the truth during the initial findings. Another argument, so the second argument for dismissal, was that the prosecution ended up withholding evidence that could have helped in Bryan Kohberger's defense, and that the jury was biased because of it. Both of these were denied back in December. His defense team has asked the judge for reconsideration and has filed a request that would be under seal. This is a motion that requests a document that has been filed in court to be confidential, basically making some of the records that are public to be unavailable to the public. This case, which is a high-profile case, has a lot of private information due to a gag order that's in place so that there's no leak of information. Since this is a high-profile case, with this new filing, it says that Kohberger has the right to justified criminal rule in order to apply whether or not there is a disadvantage with the items that are still sealed, whether they fall within the scope or not. So basically, they want to dismiss the case based on evidence that they haven't been privy to because they don't want anything to possibly be leaked. There has been a pretrial set for the end of January, specifically January 26th, on whether or not they are going to toss out the charges that are to be heard. So if you're new here or haven't heard of this case, here's the rundown. Bryan Kohberger on November 13th of 2022 broke into the off-campus home of 4 University of Idaho students in Moscow, Idaho. In these early morning hours, he killed Ethan Chapin, who's 20, Madison Mogen, who's 21, Zana Kernoodle, who's 20, and Kaylee Goncalves, who's 21, via stabbing. During the hunt for the killer, they then were able to zero in on Bryan Kohberger via forensic evidence. He was arrested while he was in his family's home in December. He would be formally indicted on 4 counts of first-degree murder with the underlying charge of burglary in May of 2023. So with the underlying charge of burglary, it gives the state the option for the death penalty. In certain states, there has to be an underlying cause or attributing factor to uphold the charge with a penalty of death. If convicted, he would be the 9th person in Idaho that would be on death row in the state as of right now, because Idaho has not carried out a death penalty since 2012. So it was reported last year that Idaho actually wants to reintroduce firing squad death penalty for executions due to lethal injection not being humane, but also needing a backup death penalty in case one isn't available. So when there's not one available, then another one would be in use, just like what happened in Utah with Ronnie Lee Gardner in 2010. Lethal injection wasn't available, and he chose firing squad for his execution. So like I mentioned with the Adam Montgomery and Harmony Montgomery case, with that underlying charge, that brings it to be a death penalty case. So that, my friends, is this week's true crime recap. I know it's super short, super sweet and to the point, but I wanted to cover and highlight the really big things because obviously this world is falling to pieces. We have a primary that's basically going to dump. We don't know what this world is basically going to be like. So I wanted to make this short, sweet, and to the point. And I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll see you guys in another one. Bye, guys.